Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another all-new edition of Reverse the Verse Live, the only show that constantly rolls one for initiative and therefore ends the round each and every week on Fridays. I'm your host, content manager Jared Huckabee, and I've been playing D&D games here in the office on Thursday nights, and it's starting to seep into everything else I do. Not sorry. On the show this week, we have Vehicle Pipeline Director John Crewe and Vehicle Concept Art Director Paul Jones here to talk all about all things related to the recently revealed Drake Vulture. But up first, let's do our quick weekend review. Now, last Friday, we had John Crewe on to answer questions regarding all 7 ships being added to Star Citizen in the upcoming Alpha 3.2. Now, I bet when John Crewe got promoted to Vehicle Pipeline Director, he never dreamed his best responsibility would be to helping me out each and every week. What a lucky guy. Then on Monday, we saw another episode of our weekly question and answer series, Calling All Devs. And in the variety of topics we touched on this week, we addressed the old chestnut referred to colloquially as agent smithing. And because RTV rolled 1 on initiative and has to go on last after everything else each week, I have an update for you after this week's episode. So, in the early days of the project, Chris talked about a potential mechanic that would allow players to drop in and out of Star Citizen wherever their friends were playing. Now, this was intended to foster a short-term, immediate gameplay experience with your friends in times where you potentially had a very limited availability. Now, at the time, we likened this feature to Agent Smith from the Matrix movies, where he would pop in where another person was and in control. Now, over the years, as new backers joined the project and the term agent smithing was tossed around in casual conversation, we noticed a second narrative emerge regarding this feature, one featuring a more literal interpretation of the agent smith metaphor, where you, as your character, warped in and ultimately replaced the NPC with yourself, complete with your look and capabilities, just like Agent Smith did in the movies. Now, this second interpretation came up again very recently in a conversation with Kirk, where he commented on the upcoming additions to the grouping system and spectrum integration, where you can see what your friend was doing online, where they were in the persistent universe, and he said you could just push a button and join them. Now, we began to see a whole bunch of questions about whether this comment meant that you could effectively teleport to another player's location. It did not. Kirk just meant that we'd like to give you a button to launch your game, from the Spectrum's friends list. It's still something on our wish list. Now, when the question of agent smithing came up 2 weeks later in this week's Calling All Devs, everything Star Citizen Live Game Director Todd Pappy said was 100% correct. We have no intention at this time to allow teleporting of any kind of your player character, either through the Spectrum group integration we plan, or in the more literal interpretation of agent smithing, where your character would overwrite that of an existing NPC. Now, where I messed up was in failing to ask Todd the follow-up question regarding Chris's original intention behind the mechanic, which was just simply controlling a friend's NPC. So, all week after talking to Todd and Chris both at length, while such a mechanic isn't anticipated anytime soon, or even on the roadmap for the next year, we do still want to pursue allowing players to assume control of their friends' NPC crew members when desired. Now, this would be done without access to any of the advantages your player characters would have in money, ships, or other resources. And any gains made while you were in control of the NPC would remain those of the NPC crew member. It's still a system that needs quite a bit of development before I'm going to have anything more to tell you in a definitive sense. But I did want to take the time to set the record straight regarding our intentions to pursue such a feature in the future. So agent smithing is still on, and we can all go back to theory crafting the advantages and disadvantages, the potential exploits and lightly implementations of such a feature now. And when there's more to share about it, which is again, not on the roadmap for at least the next 12 months, we'll let you know. So what else happened this week? Thursday saw the reveal of an all-new entry-level profession ship, the Drake Vulture. And when we return, we're going to be sitting down with John Crewe and Paul Jones to discuss this newest addition to Star Citizen. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. That was an oldie, but a goodie, but I still think that's I don't know, I played it again because I liked it. Paul, John, how you doing, guys?
Oh, good. we were just discussing the interior of the ship. Yeah.
Well, save it for the show.
I got were those the best pictures of us you could find as well on those slides?
Yeah, I've got a complaint. Like, I look like a deranged hamster in a check shirt. So.
And I'm halfway through talking.
Yeah.
Well, admittedly, I did John Crewe on purpose. I don't know. I sat there. I was looking through. I went looking through, and I don't know. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Shall we start the show?
That's another day in paradise. Welcome to Reverse the Verse, John. Welcome back. 2 weeks in a row. You're the first 2-time in a row guest. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so if you've never watched Reverse the Verse before, this is our weekly question and answer series where we take questions from Spectrum and from Twitch. You can submit your questions in either chat, Spectrum chat or Twitch chat, by prefacing your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. Our good friend, lead community manager Tyler Wicken is going to pull them out of the chat and he's going to send them to me on my nifty little iPad. Before we get started with the questions, though, let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do for Star Citizen and what you did for the Drake Vulture. And we'll start with you, Paul Jones.
Oh, that's a tricky question.
What is your name?
Hi, I'm Paul. Yeah, I am. I'm one of the art directors here at Foundry, part of Cloud Imperium Games, and I spend a lot of my time working on the concept ships, which then go onto the development team to be built, and also deal with FPS weapons and ship weapons.
I know we saw you. We've seen you a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially when this week's ATV had the second part of the weapons segment and then had the ship segment. And it was like Paul Jones and Paul Jones and Paul Jones and.
I know, I'm feeling a little bit abused. Yeah, overused maybe. But it's part of the job. I mean, we love talking about this stuff. So that's
It is a hallmark.
We can do it all day.
Yeah, it is a hallmark of Star Citizen development. It's lots of behind the scenes, lots of descriptions, lots of talking about process and how we go through things. John Crewe, who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen? What did you do for the Drake Vulture?
I'm the vehicle pipeline director, so I sort of look over all the different aspects of the ships now, from start to post-release. But at the time, I was just the lead technical designer when this first started, and I was the designer on the ship.
Yeah, so with your promotion to vehicle pipeline director, is this the last ship you would be the principal designer on?
It's not the last ship I'm the principal designer on, but I don't foresee myself doing any more directly from this point onwards.
Fair enough. It's the trials and tribulations of being promoted. All right, so yesterday we unveiled the Drake Vulture, which is our brand new entry-level salvage ship, and that is the subject of our show today. Again, we have the lead designer who was in charge of it during its original conception, the art director in charge of the look and feel of the ship. Now, Paul, you weren't the actual artist on this one. You're the person who supervised the concept artist, right?
Yes, that's right. Excuse me. So we've had a this is you always have a troublesome child. Like this one. This definitely was that one of this year so far. So we did. It's gone through the hands of several concept artists as we've tried to figure it out and find a solution.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, this is art. It's how long does it take to create something? Whenever almost every aspect of a video game development is art. I mean, there's art in the system design, there's art in the physical asset design, and when you're looking to achieve some kind of creative endeavor, some of them tend to come very easily. I've seen ships come through the pipeline where right away, like from the first thumbnail sketches, it's very quickly Chris is like that one, and you just go, and it's like the easiest childbirth in the world. And then you see other ones where, and if you're a subscriber, if you're a member of our development subscriber program, one of the virtues is the subscriber vault, where you can see the evolution of many of these ships in the subscriber vault. And some of these ships take 3 weeks worth of vault images because you just see thumbnails after thumbnails after thumbnails, and then the first 3D designs, and then no, it's just you're struggling to find that thing that strikes a chord. And Chris, tell me a little bit about what that process is like, trying to because you've done this for a number of years now for Chris, trying to strike upon a look and feel of a ship that Chris is going to respond to.
I mean, it's tough, I think I'm in my 5th year now, so the expectation is it would get easier, but I think every year the bar just gets higher. and the expectations and the quality of what we have to provide just increases, and it's just one of those things. Sometimes you just get it. You knock it out of the park first time, like you say, and it's everyone's like great. Sometimes everyone's like great, and then Chris is like, I hate it, and that for me is nobody likes that position, because you've got it wrong essentially. But sometimes it happens because it is art and it's just not what Chris expected. And it's just, how do you because you've always got deadlines with these things. So basically we have this pretty down pat now in terms of how long we assign to each segment of the development process. And obviously there's a sale date tied in, so you do have these heavy demands of trying to hit these deadlines. Otherwise, there's a big knock-on effect. So for me, it's there's always, like, of course you've got the artistic pressure, and you've got the, okay, how do we make this cool? Is this going to work for the game? Is John going to be happy with this? Is Nate going to be happy? Is Chris going to be happy? Is Todd going to be happy? And then you've got, we're going to hit our dates. So it's
these are done so far in advance as well for some of them, like the designs. Like we had that was it RTV last year for the 3 Drake ships. So the design for this ship was done back then, really. So that was November?
December.
We're in June now, so that's 7 months that this has taken. And
and it's because this actually was scheduled in terms of extra time, because it was going to a concept artist who wasn't familiar with working on ships. So a lot of our timelines are sort of work towards a senior artist. So for this one, we essentially doubled it, basically, because I know there's going to be more back and forth. I need to give myself time to sort of react, to think, to solve the problems, because if at the time there were still 5 other ships going on at the same time. So it's not like I'm just working on one ship and we can noodle away and just craft this beautiful thing and solve every single problem. I've got 5 other ships, one FPS weapon, like 2 other ship weapons going on at the same time. So
they're all in different stages, so it's not like they're all either linear one after another, or they're all start at the same time and finish at the same time.
And you're swapping.
You swap your brain from.
It's that changing of gears. So you're swapping from, let's say the Origin style to Drake style to Aegis, and it's you're going from a small ship to a massive ship to a career starter ship, and the career starter ships are always interesting because they're trying to solve something very specific, and so it is quite important that you get the look right, but also the gameplay experience.
Right, because we're one of the few projects, unlike a movie or even most games, where we build our ships 1-1. The exterior, the interior, and function has to inform the form. All right. So it's because these all have to be usable and work. It's nobody minds that the interior of the Millennium Falcon doesn't really fit inside the exterior of the Millennium Falcon if you really try to lay it all out. But all right, so we have been collecting questions. The questions have started coming in. Thank you guys so much. We also pre-gamed some questions in our Spectrum thread that was up in general chat that went up yesterday after the show. So we've got questions from a number of sources here. Right off the bat. John, will the Vulture have a grav system like the Dragonfly for salvaging wreckage on planets?
It was something we talked about early on, but ultimately didn't go with it. It's got those VTOL thrusters there, so it can hover. It's got legs, so it can land on the ground. It can salvage stuff on the ground. It's not as easy to do it whilst it's on the ground because it doesn't have as much movement. But if you find some wreckage there on the surface, you'll be able to pull it in with the tractor beams and grind it up.
Gotcha. We got quite a few questions regarding the salvage charges. Are the salvage charges something that's actually like manufactured on the Vulture? Is it something the Vulture can make and then you take them out, or is it something that you have to stock up, before you go out? What can you tell us about the salvage charges?
They're just essentially ammunition that you stock up on before you go out somewhere. So they're just loaded in. It sort of gives you a fixed amount of stuff you can do. So you have to pick your battles, so to speak. But it's not such a small amount that it's one ship and that's your lot. You have to sort of... You're not going to be able to go there and chop up 30 Idrises with a Vulture's worth of... You probably need more salvage charges than could physically fit in the Vulture to do that.
And why would you want to use a salvage charge instead of just shooting the ship and trying to break it apart into bigger pieces?
So salvage charges do it cleanly. The same as the claw on the Reclaimer. The claw does the salvage charges job for the Reclaimer, but the Vulture doesn't have that. So it has this, and sort of EVA salvage will use those as well, rather than you just like with a tiny little claw cropping away at stuff. It's the clean way of doing it, so it cuts down those breakpoints. If you're shooting it with your ship, you're going to be causing damage to the ship. You're going to be destroying the surface of the ship. So when you're scraping it, you're going to be getting much less returns. The penetration of the weapons probably will be damaging stuff on the inside. When bits break off because you've shot them, they're probably going to cause little mini explosions. You see all the squibs go down the wings it's all just deteriorating your return. So yes, you can go along and shoot it with your ship, but it's not going to be as good a return as just doing it properly with salvage charges.
Gotcha. And the first question that came in from the live chat was about how can we salvage something that's larger than a Vulture? I'm assuming the salvage charges play a big part in that.
Yeah, so those break it down into the bite-sized chunks that the Vulture can manage.
Okay. Now, by entry level, do you mean it will be a $45 Star Citizen game package? No, that question's for me, guys. Don't worry about that. I'll take the money. No, entry level means this is the beginning of that profession. This profession. This is meant when you're ready to dedicate your life to, or at least a portion of your life to the career of salvaging. And when I want to be a salvage, this is your entry level. You start here, and then you progress up to something like the Reclaimer. Because the Reclaimers, everybody's seen the Reclaimer. I would assume everybody's seen a Reclaimer by this time. You can't, everywhere you look, you see a Reclaimer in the game right now, which is fine because it's a lovely looking ship, and I don't mind at all. But this is meant to be your stepping stone. You know, you start here, and then you move your way up after you've built yourself a career and resources and capabilities to the Reclaimer. Let's see. A lot of questions about stats, things like how long is it, how tall is it, what's the cargo capacity. I am going to tell you guys that the promotion starts like it normally does later today, probably very soon after the conclusion of this show, and that'll have the stats page with all of the stats. So John, unless you're sitting there with the stats on a note, on a paper?
Length, the dimension stuff I don't know off the top of my head. Cargo capacity is 12 SEU, so it can be used as cargo transport, but that 12 SEU is really for salvage storing. But yeah, the stats on the web page have all the dimensions, the mass, and some proposed speeds as well.
Do the front arms tuck back or anything? Does the ship have any secondary form for landing or cruise flight? People just want to know if the arms move. My arms move a lot.
There's no crab claw stuff.
They don't fly like this.
It's basically there are two poses, but it's really just for you've got a landed pose and a flight pose, really. So there's no like mystery behind it. It's just pure mechanics. When we the better looking pose is when it's in the flight mode, so you get a sort of break of the silhouette, like the sort of dog leg essentially. But when you put that on a surface, then suddenly you've got to have massive landing gear at the back, really tall. It just looks really geeky and ungainly.
Bigger ramp as well.
Yeah. So it just made sense to just solve those two problems by just having the pivot of the arms.
Gotcha. Now we're talking about the arms. So let's talk about the arms for a second. I've been following the ship since, like I said, because this was we had You Pick the Next Drake ship, in December, which I got to host and put together. So it's all the ships, I follow all the ships on the Ship Shape Guide and everything. But this one I've been kind of, has been a little more in my field of view over the last 6 months. And as watching the progression of this ship was interesting. I think when we talked earlier, and we talked about how some are an easy berth and some are not as easy a berth. This one, would you say is fair to classify as not an easy berth?
Yeah, it was a difficult one for sure. Okay. I mean, originally when we started off, it was basically the equivalent of a space transit van.
Yeah, I've actually got some images here. JJ, can we throw up the first image there? There you go.
So it was, we did some initial sketches, and it was. It wasn't meant to be pretty. It was, it was literally meant to be super functional. It was like a dude and his truck, and he's going out there, and he's got a boom arm with the laser scraper on or whatever, and that's kind of the sort of general theory. There was an idea that it would have a side opening. Again, it's kind of like those vans you get where people get bundled into the side, except this time
Just
putting your cargo
chucking the components and bits in.
Yeah, so it was almost meant to be a little bit sort of pig ugly.
Yeah, it's as a fan of the Drake aesthetic and how ugly and functional it is. When I saw these, I was personally excited because they were asymmetrical. They were construction yellow, like all the old Tonka toys I used to play with. And again, you could sense that it was definitely function related. It was definitely a piece of construction equipment, or in this case, deconstruction equipment. As it started to go on, I've got a second image here. Let me see. Oops. Let me make that bigger there.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the Drake Vulture version A. This looks like where you started first putting them into 3D.
Images?
Yeah, 6 images.
Yeah. So it kind of went a little more sort of slab-sided than I had intended at this point, but it was still sort of getting across the overall feel of the ship that we were initially looking at: compact. Industrial, mechanical.
Plenty of space to stuff.
Yeah. Now,
stuff into it.
What were some of the? I know we said this wasn't easy berth. What were some of the criticisms you were hearing at this point? Right off the bat, I'm going to say it looks like flying outpost.
Yeah, the sort of feedback was Chris hated it, and it was back to the drawing board. It just, sometimes I think Chris wants, this is Chris's game, Chris's vision. He wants something more interesting, and this was, I'm guessing here, I'm not Chris, but it was just too simple. It was a box,
Well,
just essentially don't ever show that again. Come with something better.
All right. So from there, you started to get out of the box shapes. So
yeah, so then I kind of, didn't want to because looking at these, they don't particularly fill the function that we wanted it to fill. It was just sort of cool looking shapes. I was trying to sort of, it was really just a way of sort of breaking the artist out of his thinking of let's just mess around at the moment. We're going back to the start. Let's just look at some shapes. Maybe rather than it just being a standard box shape at the back, maybe the stuff that you're reclaiming is going into these storage capsules basically at the back. I don't know how you'd get them out. There was none of that thinking really. It was just literally, let's just look at some different shapes, like something that's a little more interesting.
Yeah, you can definitely see the course correction from it's too boxy to now you've got cylinders and stuff like that. It's a what would you say? It's like a palette cleanser. It's like let's go 180 degrees in another direction to break from what we've been doing and see if we can go.
And also just sort of Drake has a sort of signature cross section to some of its areas, and it's a very slight curve to some of the surfaces with a nice sort of fillet, basically. And so it was just bringing more of those slightly softer shapes and more interesting forms back in.
Yeah. Now, I should say, we're showing a couple images from a couple key milestones, but there were a lot of variation of this. And again, you can, if you're a subscriber, you can expect to see those in the subscriber vault in the coming weeks. From there, looks like you went back to pen and paper.
So what happened, so we hit another road bump just before this, where the concept artist who was working with us decided he wanted to move on to work for a different studio, work in a different field. And of course, that's kind of a bit of a spoke in the wheels. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it was a video game industry. It's just concept artists are in demand, and they're, to find high quality staff that we need for this project. They're kind of like hen's teeth. They're really just, when you find one, you just want to keep hold of them for as long as you can. But he'd worked with us for a couple of years and he wanted to move on. So basically, we were kind of stranded for a couple of weeks because we had nobody to work on it. And then I was just like, okay, well, I need to keep this rolling. And we just need to keep moving forward. So basically, there's another chap that we work with. He's a freelancer. He did used to work for us, and he created the Dragonfly, basically. And he comes from an automotive industrial design background. He's very good at sort of shotgunning ideas. And I'm kind of mean. I'm like, okay, you've got 2 days to give me as many ideas as you can, and that's it. All you've got is 2 days. And he's just like, oh, what? You're like, I can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, you can. And so he just crashed out a whole bunch. And this was just one of them. I think he did about 6. And pretty much at the same time, one of the guys on the team who was a junior at the time, he was inspired, and so he like right off his own bat, he just one day, because I was working at home, and he was like, oh, I've done this morning, and just sends me, and we'll see it a little bit later on. And so I'm sat there thinking, well, if he can do that, I'm gonna have a crack too. Let's all have a go at this. But the one that we're looking at now is, it's a little more sort of off the wall thinking. It's sort of,
you can see some of the elements that sort of started coming through to the final.
Yeah. You see the introduction of the arms. This is a ship that has to manipulate physical objects, outside the ship, but within close proximity. So you see the introduction of arms here. They're downward.
Yeah, and this was basically directly in response to that day. Me sat at home. I was just thinking about, okay, how do we kickstart? How do we re-kick this off? What's interesting and I think I just said to myself, right, as a player, what do I want to see? Like when I'm in my cockpit, what do I want to see? And so I was talking to the team, and we were bouncing ideas, and so we all sort of, like, the three of a couple of us went off in this direction of, okay, we've got these 2 booms in front of us, like that's needs to keep it industrial. Let's just see what you come up with.
So then after that, it looks like this is supposed to be an animated GIF, and I apologize for it not playing, but you can actually see this in motion in ATV. So this looks like just the command module, like you drew back and just decided to focus on the command module.
No, this is actually it's kind of hard to see from this animation, but essentially Alex had done the full ship. And basically he had got extending booms on it. I think that was the collector. Okay. Yeah, and then also he basically he'd put an arm on it, and it was sort of collecting. It was wafting in the stuff that you'd chopped off your ship, basically. But it was a really good stab at it. At this point, all ideas are welcome.
Yeah, very similar to Vulcan.
And it kind of, and ultimately it worked out for Alex because he became the artist who took the ship to the final stages.
And then from here, after we've introduced the arms now, they're retractable. The last image had them face down. This one has them retracted. Then we get to this. Now this is the first time, if I remember looking at the real-time board, this is the first time that we get close to the shape that would ultimately stick with the design.
Yeah, so this was, it was just that fateful day, sat at home, I'd actually got a couple of hours of, free time, I wouldn't say free time, free headspace to actually think this thing through. And I don't pretend to be a concept artist, but I can certainly help. My job is to push people and to break them out of their thinking. So mine was more of a functionality pass. Okay, what could we do? Yeah, maybe we don't have this mechanic just yet, but let's think about some cool things. And in a couple of hours just crashed out some shapes, and from there that was basically our jumping off point.
It's a very common shape. We get done with the slideshow, JJ. Thank you. It's a very common shape. You see it all through sci-fi. It's when you've got a spaceship that has to manipulate something in close proximity, and the pilot is facing forward, and you want to be able to see the manipulation, you end up with this. The thing, when I first saw it, the thing that my mind immediately went to was Attack of the Clones. The little ships that came and picked up the big vats, and the little cargo things that come, flies down and picks up the cargo. When you need a flying vessel that is supposed to manipulate the physical environment in front of you, it's a very common shape throughout sci-fi. We've seen it in Wing Commander. In the original Wing Commander, there were ships that were like that, the Star Wars and stuff like that. So it's definitely a function, meets form, or function informs form.
Yeah, I mean, we've got so many things that we have to solve. There's only so many routes you can really go without it looking wacky. We've got, we could do some really crazy stuff, but it's Drake. We've got a certain ethos that we're trying to continue with. There's obviously there's nods to the Dragonfly, obviously with the twin pontoons. Absolutely. And actually my initial inspiration came from
the Sphinx.
No, not the Sphinx. From one of our a junior guy who's joined us called Sheng Lam. He's got some great work on his website. So I was just like, okay, let's have a look at some ideas. So he'd got a ship there, twin pontoons. I was like, okay, and it just sort of broke me out of the thinking, and then off we go.
Yeah.
But when you sort of, it's an industrial kind of vehicle. Your references a JCB, Caterpillar, ground, sort of road laying vehicles. They there's a lot of commonality that people.
It's a classic sci-fi shape. I think going all the way back to Blade Runner. Remember, like the spinners are the same shape. It's a very classic sci-fi shape.
If you take the round bit off the Falcon, there you go. It's still. Yeah. That's what it was for.
Yeah. So it's very cool. The minute you hit on this, I'm like, that's where we're going. That's where we're going. It was very cool to see. All right. So back to the design questions, because I know we got Paul. We don't get Paul on very often, guys. So I'm going to talk about process because I like the art. So thanks for indulging me. All right. Can the Vulture eat a ship that hasn't yet been destroyed?
Yeah, it's essentially, as I talked about in the ATV, there's multiple processes to salvaging. So you can go in and strip all the components out. If it's not destroyed, that's fine. It just makes it a little bit harder to obviously get in, because there's probably going to be people in there. They're probably not too happy on you taking all the stuff out their ship. If there's not people in there, it's probably going to be powered on, so you're going to need to do some breaching to get in, to get all the bits out. And then the first step after that is scraping the hull. So it doesn't need to be destroyed to go along and take the stuff off.
You said that, and my mind instantly went to, can the salvage charges be used as breach charges? Like, I'm just going to salvage this door and get myself inside.
It's unorthodox, but probably will work.
Unorthodox is my... well, it's all three of my names.
So, oops, right. I didn't quite align this salvage charge to the hull properly, and now it's on the door. What a shame.
Okay. Is the Vulture most effective in a fleet, or can it truly do well solo?
It can do well solo. If you're in a, there's plenty of ships that we're envisioning, because I think we said the Reclaimer can take essentially a full Connie's worth of salvage. I think probably it can take a little bit more now. The back hold is quite large. Probably fit a Connie in their hull, let alone crushed up. So for the Vulture, we're looking at something in the sort of extra small ship range, M50, 85X, maybe a little bit larger Gladius-wise, if you take everything out of it. And that's a lot of volume to grind and compact down. So
it's a whole new version of the ever popular Star Citizen game, Will It Fit?
Yeah.
It's like, well, have you salvaged it first or not?
Can we salvage a Big Benny's?
Oh, easily. If you're in a fleet,
don't say no. Don't commit to that.
If you're in a fleet, you can obviously take bigger things, but then you've got to come up with some gentleman's agreement on how much of each you take. Oh, you take the left wing, I'll take the right wing, and we'll meet in the middle of the hull somewhere. And then
it could
get
be
into an argument.
It could be like a whole scene like from The Matrix, where you've just got a whole bunch of vultures, and they're all they're all just basically stripping a ship.
Yeah. On something really big, then a pack of them is not going to be able to strip everything. So it's just going to be this sort of feeding hotspot. Which would be great for other ships and players to come across. All these, they're not defenseless, but not designed for combat. Salvages.
Now, obviously, salvage gameplay is not, it's not complete. It's obviously not implemented in games. So the focus right now, as far as those kind of systems are on mining, coming in Alpha 3.2. What do we imagine, knowing full well that this can change over the course of development? How long are we currently thinking it would take to salvage something like a Hornet?
That's a Tony question.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's not going to be a point and click, come back 5 minutes later job.
Yeah, it's an important distinction. I figured I would try it, guys, but there's the ship systems and there's the game systems, and while they certainly interact and stuff, they are usually two different design principles. So when we get closer to actually implementing salvage in game, you can be sure that we'll have a whole one of these with Tony and whoever's working on salvage to answer salvage specific questions. What's on the back of the Vulture? There's a thing with wings. It almost looks like a little drone sitting on the back. We had a lot of questions in the thread last night about whether that was actually a drone, or what purpose does it serve, or can it detach and fly around? Can it be a falconer in space? What is the thing with the little spoiler in the back?
It's just a design detail. I guess it could, I guess it would be perceived as some sort of scanning equipment, essentially.
It's just a thing that looks
but it
cool.
doesn't. There's nothing as exciting as it detaching and you flying it around and scouting, or having a mini vulture, a baby vulture, just detach. No, there's none of that. Sorry.
No.
Well, then I'm done. I'm done.
We go over all these ships with such a fine tooth comb, and we just don't spot things like that, and then straight out the gate.
Yeah.
Are there any monkeys hidden, or any parrots hidden in the concept art for this one, Paul?
No. There are some birds though. So one of the key art images, we're what's the word? We've featured the vulture in there.
For those of you wondering where the heck that question came from, I'm going to send you on a scavenger hunt. There is an image related to the Origin 100 that has a parrot hidden in there that Paul and his team decided to just sneak in there.
I had thought, maybe we'll make this a new thing and we'll just try and squeeze a bird into a piece of concept art on. So, we've got some concept art starting pretty soon. So who knows?
Another question for me, not for you guys. Why no special skins or other boons for ordering early Warbond? Because if you do something every time it's no longer special. It's it's just like with the Vulcan, where we did different skins, and some ships have costumes and stuff. We try to change the things around. Because this is one of the things you strive to avoid in any project management development is stagnation, and the idea that you're just doing the same thing over and over again. So sometimes a ship will have a special thing, sometimes a ship won't have a special thing, sometimes the special thing if it does have it, will be vastly different things. For this particular promotion, the advantage is the discount on the price, which is pretty good if you ask me. What else do we got? Salvage charges. Does the advent of salvage charge mean that we can salvage without the use of something like the Vulture or the Reclaimer? Can we take salvage charges out in the back of our Freelancer and then use them and bring stuff back to the Freelancer?
So in theory, yes. They obviously enable you to start splitting bits off ships. So there's nothing to stop you using them to do that. If you've got a way of getting those bits back into your hull, there's nothing to stop you doing that either. Where it all sort of starts falling apart is when you come to go sell those bits. So if in a salvage ship, it's all been nicely processed, maybe it's been refined, depending on the ship, maybe it hasn't. So that dictates the value and where you're going to sells it. If you rock up in your Freelancer with, oh, hey, I've got the tail fin of a Hornet here.
Yeah.
Unprocessed, damaged. If we give you the ability to sell that, it's going to be nowhere near the effectiveness of turning up in your Vulture with, hey, I've got 12 SAU of processed Hornets. Give me all the money.
Yeah, because I don't know in the concept art, like in the stuff that'll be released today, if we actually we don't really show the interior of the cargo hold, but we have basically figured it all out, and there is basically there's the nod to the Reclaimer where you can actually see inside all the processing equipment, and then basically it all gets
compacted. It's like a big
processed and compacted into a box in it, and basically it pops out a box ready for you to just go and sell, essentially.
The Reclaimer we're not quite sure how the Reclaimer is going to fill up its hold, whether it's going to use a similar bigger version of that, or whether it's just going to be raw cubes of compressed metal. But there's the ability to have those two different states of, here's processed metal in a box, easy, nice, ready to go, ready to sell, or whether it's just like the raw scrap compressed in a box. Like you take that to a manufacturing plant, or you can perhaps sell it to a refinery, or you can get your Reclaimer to even process it more into those boxes. So you have the options there to change the output.
Gotcha. John, hypothetical. Would a Vandal salvage ship be immortal?
Good question.
It's actually not me. That's Quincy Forder. He said it, and I almost lost my cool. That's a Vandal salvage. He's a DC comic character. Anyway, he happens to be immortal. Vandal salvage. I appreciated you, Quincy Forder, and you keep dropping those in the chat.
This is one of these comic book things.
I appreciate it. Back when we first started pitching this ship during the December You Pick the Next Drake ship, one of the words that was applied to the Vulture at the time was stealthy. Now, is that stealth in the traditional sense where it's got stealth components, meaning a low danger, or is that stealth in that it's a whole lot smaller than something like the Reclaimer? And
it's stealthy by its size, not its components. It doesn't have any super Drake high-tech stealth stuff on it. It's just, it's a one-man band ship. Even though it's got those two booms out the front, it's still very compact compared to just turning up in your Reclaimer, which is going to be this huge signature. I think in the ATV where we talked about it, or you guys talked about it, it was you can sneak into things that are happening, so battles that are going on, and it's such a relatively small ship that you're not going to notice it against all these fighters whizzing around, so you'll be in there grabbing bits whilst you can, being the opportunistic scavenger.
Okay. What can you tell us about the Vulture's defenses?
It's not particularly great. It's 2 size 1s. It's not a combat ship. It's got armor. It's got size 1 guns to annoy people that are attacking it and put them off. It's got countermeasures, but if you're dogfighting in it, unless you're dogfighting another Vulture or something similarly armed like the Prospector, it's not designed for that at the end of the day.
Next question from the chat says, what will the loaner be for the Vulture? Please report that we anticipate the loaner for the Vulture to be the Prospector. So the Vulture will be a neat opportunity. Obviously, the Vulture is just being revealed as a concept today, or yesterday and today and whatnot. It won't be implemented in game anytime in the traditional, soon. Right? But if you do decide to pick up a Vulture, you will have access to a Prospector in the interim. So with mining on coming in a couple weeks, yeah. I don't even have a watch. I don't know what I'm looking at. So it's a pretty good deal there if you don't own a Prospector. It's a pretty good deal there, I think. Let's see, what else do we got? I think you already touched on this before, but what do you do with salvage material once you get it? So you touched on there's some kind of refinement process inside the Vulture.
Yes. So the Vulture really just crunches it, sticks it in a box, ready to sell. Mid to long term, if it was in the game today, what you'd be able to do with it would be able to take it to the various outposts and sell it for various prices. Mid to long term, you'll be taking it to manufacturing plants. So they're obviously going to be in the universe. They need raw materials to create things. So you'll be able to go there and do trading. We want to look at, like I said, different options for onboard refining, sort of like how the Starfarer can refine fuel into different grades. This would be the same. Whether the Vulture can do that or not, at a bare minimum, it will be chopping it up and presenting it for sale. But whether we let you sort of smelt it down or leave that to the refineries is again, as a Tony thing. But it's the supply and demand system of manufacturers and refineries need these raw elements. You're the ones to get it for the price. You sell it to them. If you're able to refine things, you can probably go straight to the manufacturing plant. If not, you need to go to the refinery. You've got that onboard cargo capacity, so you could go to the other end of the refinery, pick up the same amount of refined ore or refined metal, take it to the manufacturing plant. So you don't just have to do the scrapyard to refinery loop over and over and again. You can be that intermediate person. You could even go to the manufacturing one at the other side of that, take out what they've manufactured, take that somewhere to sell.
Okay. Paul, we have a follow-up question for you. You just showed us so many concepts you landed on before the final version. Is this normal in the pipeline to go through so many different ideas? Is that normal?
I mean, we do a lot. I mean, basically, but this was probably like sort of maybe 50% more than we'd normally do. I mean, what normally happens is we try. Well, different artists work in different ways, right? So some are happy to work in 2D, so they do the thumbnail sketches. Some are 3D only. So often we generally try and sort of aim for three options to present to Chris, and they're all good, but they're all different. They're not just like slight, a wing here or a wing here, because that's neither here nor there. They've got
three big style changes.
Yeah. And so yes, this one there was a lot, but we've got another one just in process where it's there's a lot more there too.
So I just realized I could see myself in the reflection in the back. When exploring the shapes and forms, Paul, does the artist explore the shapes, or is design involved in figuring out shapes?
The design is kept in the, we work together, but design basically works from functionality point of view. Is the gun at the front, on the top, or the bottom? Navigation, does this work well?
Yeah,
Let's go from A
over
to
the
B.
years we've changed the process quite a lot. It used to be designers would come up with a brief, and we'd do white boxes of how we think it should be, and we'd be the ones sourcing reference. But that just sort of ends up down a path where the people working on it felt very constrained by what it had to be. So we sort of took a step back. We just do the brief. If we got some really cool ideas on how we think it should work, then we just include that in the brief, but we don't do any more than that until I've had a good go at coming up with these shapes. If they want to confirm anything's risky in terms of is this still going to fit the brief, then we work backwards and forwards on that. But by the time those 3 big shapes go to Chris, we know that they'll work with the design. Those 3 might have come out of 30 quick sketches. And quite often Chris will go, well, I want the front half of that one, the back half of that one, but the colours from that one. And then we go from there, and then design and art get much more hands-on as we build it out from there. Because it's a waste of both departments' time if we spend a lot of time working on the details at those early stages, because 2 out of the 3 are going to be completely thrown away at bare minimum. So we wait for the vision.
Generally we have like 2 weeks. We sign 2 weeks for that initial look dev, basically. So that's got 2 weeks. Boom, let's go. Let's see what we can. We know what it has to do. Like it has to. And then we sort of, where we can, try and think out of the box. And so by just having this sort of spec list from design, it's just a wall of text and tick boxes and information.
We changed the template quite recently. It used to be this huge long design document. There's like 6 pages full of pictures and white boxes, and it's now one sheet of A4 paper with tick boxes of it does this, it must have this, it must account for this many people.
So it's kind of like getting a recipe without the pictures. So then the artist doesn't have a preconceived image that sort of can dictate how it starts. So basically, just by having this set of information, they can, ideally just come up with, they're free to come up with different ideas, and that's just part of the process. You have to, any of the ships, any of the like, if you just look at any of the concept art that we do, there's always a lot like a history, a large history of stuff that wasn't right, didn't work for X reason, didn't look quite right. But you start wide, and then you just slowly narrow in and in, and at the start it's just rough and loose, and you know you're going to be throwing them away, so you don't get attached, but you're just like boom, 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 and then just keep polishing.
Yeah, and sometimes we look back at them when we're coming up with other ones. We go, actually, do you remember the early version of this ship that everyone hated for that manufacturer because it didn't look like that manufacturer? Right. Oh, it actually looks. Now that we're doing this one, we could look back at that one.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're pretty much out of time, but I want to do a couple lightning questions here, just questions that came up in multiple sources. Just lightning fast, quick answers. Does it have a bed?
Yes.
Does it have a toilet?
Yes.
That's it. No,
of course.
Let's see. We said that you have to climb up to get in. Once you've climbed up on it, where do you enter?
The bed or the toilet?
The ship.
Oh, the cab.
Yeah.
So basically, there's handholds up one of the arms, climb up to the cab, and again, it's got that very sort of industrial construction feel. The door actually sort of swings open, and it's
sealed.
Yeah, it's a sealed space basically, so you're not venting the whole ship. And then you get in, and then the seat moves, and you get in, and you're all good, and all the instruments fall down not fall down, but fold down. If they fell down, that would be kind of bad, right?
Yeah. But you can also get in through the ramp at the back from the cargo bay. There's a sealed shaft to get you up from the cargo bay to the living quarters, which is what we were talking about at the start.
We couldn't remember if we actually put a lift in the end or actually had
I think it's been
ladder.
both at various times throughout it, so it might have both in there. like a little lift with a emergency ladder in the
Because
side
I think
of it.
the lift actually makes the seal, doesn't it?
So it is sealed, so the back can be open, and you're not venting yourself in the cargo bay in the living quarters.
We have
And the
worked
living
on
quarters
the
has a
ship.
door to the cab. So
I'm guessing they don't have the term lightning around in the UK.
no.
No, I love it, people. I will never complain about anybody giving me more information than I asked for. So let's see. But that's it. That is all that we have time for now. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show. John, of course, thank you for being here 2 weeks in a row. Paul, thank you for volunteering to be on the show last week and then us not being able to use you for the show. But so again, it's you. I can't do my job without you guys. So thank you so much.
Well, we
No
will
problem.
try our best.
All right, guys, we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll do the wrap up. Stay tuned. Real quick, guys, what happens if you salvage a vulture that's got salvage in the hold?
Get extra salvage.
That works. Well, that does it for this week's show. A special thanks to Paul Jones and John Crewe for taking the time to be here on the show with us this week. Some quick housekeeping before we let you go. The Drake Vulture promotion begins today and will run for the next several weeks, so don't miss your chance to get in on the ground floor of a promising career in salvage. And then next week, we've got another all-new episode of Calling All Debs with your backer-submitted, backer-voted-on questions, including one about insurance timers. I know. I wonder if I'll have to do another correction next Friday. And then, of course, we'll be right back here Friday probably with that correction on the insurance timers, because my life is full of questions and answers and clarifications. And, well, that's what happens. That's what happens when you do game development live or promotion live in the middle of game development. I wouldn't have it any other way. You guys deserve it. For Reverse the Verse Live, I forgot my name. I'm content manager for global video production, Jared Huckabee. I'll probably see you next week, everybody.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.